For the first few months of school, most lessons were led by Aurora. Younger adepts rarely saw the other teachers, as their respective elements were considered far too advanced for beginners. You see, my aunt was the resident mistress of water, which is widely regarded as the safest element, and therefore the first which sorceresses must become proficient in. From hydromancy to mind manipulation, we spent most of that first term submerged in the element of water, charting its many beneficial uses and learning the theory in meticulous and intricate detail. It was quite the slog, as you can imagine, to be so close to using magic, yet restrained by the fetters of the curriculum schedule. The mundanity of the introductory classes have now all but amalgamated into one blurry memory, yet I can still vividly remember our first exercise. We had not long since learned about the water veins that flowed beneath the ground. Practically everywhere, these veins, and their corresponding intersections, are one of the most accessible sources of power from which mages can draw, and therefore an ideal starting point for the inexperienced. For our first practical, we were each challenged to retrieve a magical crystal from somewhere inside the cavern beneath Aretuza, hidden deep within the labyrinth like underbelly. They had been placed above the most powerful source of power in the vicinity, and therein lay the challenge. We had to locate the most potent veins and intersections and follow them to the secret location. A relatively simple task. Or so I thought. Luckily, we didn't have to go into those dark, damp passages empty-handed. We were each allowed to take a single item to help with our endeavour. Most girls, spurred by their ignorance, opted to take a water wand. This was an obvious choice on the surface, but a moment's thought about the practicality of such an object exposed its flaw. You see, water wands can identify intersections quite easily, yet they cannot distinguish the strength of the source. In short, within a maze of intersections, they were next to useless. I decided to be rather unconventional with my selection and chose to take Scoundrel, a rather chubby tabby. Although he lived on the grounds of Aretuza, no one claimed him as their own, and he was considered, quite affectionately, as the mascot of the school during his lifespan, which was implausibly long if I recall. I chose him because, like most cats, he would sense sources of power, and they were said to be fond of sleeping on intersections. Scoundrel had often disappeared for hours, even days at a time, and would then return with a delicate aura surrounding him. I'd always wondered where he was going to soak up the power, and deduced that he probably went to bask in the heart of the complex beneath the school, no doubt where the crystals were hidden. I mean, it was worth a shot at least. Note, no one knows how or why cats absorb magic. It has stumped even the most inquisitive wizarding minds for centuries, and is one of the great mysteries of our time. Okay, I love this. As it happens, my plan worked. Barely. I spent hours trudging behind the cat as he nonchalantly sauntered through the caverns with evidently no desire to reach any peculiar destination. He frequently stopped and lay down for no specific reason, or to clean himself, or to swipe erratically at a random pebble that caught his eye. However, the biggest blocker, and something I really should have foreseen, was the abundance of vermin living in the cave. Each time some rodent scurried out from a nook or cranny, Scoundrel would jump to action and chase it. I remember yearning for a water wand at one point when my furry friend had disappeared down a narrow passage in pursuit of a rather rotund rat, and didn't return for the better part of half an hour. After what seemed like days, Scoundrel finally led me to the secret chamber. Yet it was not the victory I so desperately craved. There were only 2 crystals left, which meant I was the second to last student to locate them. I was crestfallen, and although I sulked for a while upon exiting the cave, I soon discovered that my situation could have been worse. Much worse. You see, the last crystal was never claimed. Zorika, one of the oldest and brightest students of our year, hadn't returned from the underground network of passages. We were reassured that this was usual and happened to 1 or 2 students each year, but they would always, sooner or later, find their way back to the surface. Yet sundown came, and still there was no sign of Zorika. That night, Nina Fioravanti, the Mistress of Earth, led a small search party consistent of a handful of older adepts that were studying the caverns as part of their archaeology class, and so were familiar with the system of caves. Yet, apparently the labyrinth contained numerous corridors still unknown to them, and extended far deeper than they could have imagined. It took them 12 hours to find the girl, and she left Aretuza the very next day, for good. Kalina told me she bumped into Zorika as Clara Larissa de Winter, the school's founder and headmistress, whisked her out of the front gate and onto a carriage. She said the girl was far from her usual cheery self, Her face was deathly pale and her eyes glazed and vacant, as if lost in a deep trance. When Kalina had asked how she was, she completely ignored her, or didn't hear her at all, as Kalina had put it. The girl was somewhat between petrified and paralysed. I still think about those caverns from time to time, at what could have happened to her down in the dark of Aretuza's underbelly, or what she saw. The teachers, my aunt included, outright refused to talk about the situation and would scold anyone who brought it up. And I knew then, and now, for that matter, is that soon after Zorika left the school, Mistress de Winter ordered every known entrance to the cave to be sealed indefinitely, and they never sent adepts looking for crystals in the dark ever again. Wow. Okay, I want to know what happened in those caves. Oh, wow. Okay. Very interesting.